Today we're going to dive deep into each of the neighborhoods that make up Sudbury, Ontario. We'll be covering the West End, South End, Minnow Lake, and New Sudbury. And before you say I'm leaving out the surrounding towns, don't worry, I'll be covering the outskirts in a separate video. In this one, we'll be going over things like neighborhood amenities, average sale price, and much more. And if you're from Sudbury and you feel like I've missed some things by the end of the video, leave a comment, as I'd love to see people shouting out their neighborhoods and why they love living there. The first neighborhood we'll be looking at is, in my opinion, Sudbury's most underrated neighborhood, and that is Minnow Lake. Minnow Lake is in the eastern part of the city, right under New Sudbury. It seems like when people talk about the most affordable areas around Sudbury, the West End and even the outskirts are sometimes brought up before Minnow Lake. But if we take a look at the average sale price over the last year across these areas, you'll see that Minnow Lake should definitely be in the conversation in regards to affordability. If you're someone with a young family, Minnow Lake has 3 elementary schools, and since you're so close to downtown and New Sudbury, some high schools are a 15-minute walk away. There's also a handful of parks and some of the best trails in the city around Minnow Lake. There's trails like Blueberry Hill and places like Moonlight Beach, which brings out people from all over the city on sunny days. If it's a rainy day and you can't enjoy the outdoors, places like the movie theater and the New Sudbury Center are just a 5-minute drive away. And the last thing I'll say about Minnow Lake is something that I've kind of been saying already. Although it is a great place to be, you are a short drive from most amenities like restaurants and grocery stores, so if walkability is important to you, it could be something to keep in mind. But that can be said for most of Sudbury. Next, we'll move on to the largest part of the city, and that is Sudbury's West End. The West End of Sudbury is made up of the Flour Mill, Donovan, Downtown, Gatchell, Little Britain, and the Old Hospital area. These areas are also where you can find the most affordable homes in Sudbury, but there's of course reasons for that. In some areas of the West End, like Gatchell and Little Britain, you might not have a driveway and the road could be too skinny to park on the street. This means that your driveway/parking comes in the form of a small laneway behind your house and all your neighbors. If you're not from the area, you might be surprised to see how many laneways make up the West End. And another tip, if you're not from the area, some of the worst intersections in Sudbury are in the West End near Gatchell on Lawrence Street. One of them is literally nicknamed Killer's Crossing for the sheer amount of crosswalks and roads that meet at this one intersection. Now, in terms of crime, the city's highest crime rates do come from the Donovan, Flour Mill, and downtown areas in the West End, with those areas experiencing 36% more crime than Greater Sudbury as a whole. These areas are getting better each year, with new businesses opening up and properties being renovated, so it'll be interesting to see how much progress is made over the next 5 to 10 years. Sudbury's downtown is also host to a bunch of local restaurants, coffee shops, and bars, as well as the Sudbury Arena, where the Sudbury 5 and Wolves play. We do have concerts, however, our arena doesn't really have the capacity to host any big-name artists. It's one of the problems that Sudbury has been dealing with for a while now, especially after the KED project was just scrapped. Things like the Sudbury Public Transit Station and the Via Rail train station are also both located downtown, but if you're looking to fly to or from Sudbury, you'll have to take around a 20-minute drive to the outskirts to find the airport. Before I go too far, the last neighborhood that makes up the West End and starts to blend into the South End is the Old Hospital area. If you couldn't guess by the name, the Old Hospital area is where you'll find some of the most unique and oldest homes in all of Sudbury. Almost any listing in this area will have the words character home in its description. Most of these homes were built in the early 1900s and have a lot of unique features like original banisters and different style layouts. And speaking of unique, this is also where you can find Canada's largest mural. Graffiti artist Risk painted over the old abandoned 74,000 square foot St. Joseph's Hospital in 2019 as a part of the Up Here Festival, which takes place every summer in Northern Ontario. Now, depending on who you talk to in Sudbury, some people love it and some people hate it. In my opinion, I'm just happy to see Sudbury getting some notice from something besides having 3 of the top 5 worst roads in all of Ontario. But being in the Old Hospital area, you're basically in the heart of the city. You're walking distance from downtown, Bell Park, and Science North. Bell Park is on Ramsey Lake, right beside Science North, making it one of the best places in the city to enjoy the outdoors. Right beside Science North is the hospital, and a bit more past that, you'll find Laurentian University. Laurentian University may be dealing with some things right now, but it still remains one of the largest universities in the north. Other schools you'll find throughout the West End are St. Francis Elementary, Sudbury Secondary, and Collège Boreal, which is kind of between the Flour Mill and New Sudbury. Now, if you're wondering how expensive homes in the West End are, here's the average sale price for the area as a whole. And here is each neighborhood individually. The next neighborhood we'll be looking at is the South End, and this is where you'll find the most expensive homes in all of Sudbury. Average sale price in the South End can change a lot depending on what street you're on. If you're on Southview Drive, you can expect to find a nice brick bungalow for around $600,000. But if you move over a couple streets to Coursey Hill, you'll start seeing million-dollar homes. The busiest area of the South End is the intersection where Paris and Regent Street meet, known as the Four Corners. This is where you'll find a bunch of shopping like grocery stores, local businesses and restaurants, and the Southridge Mall, which doesn't have much besides a sports check and a Good Life Fitness. Just a few minutes down from the Four Corners, you'll find Llewellyn Park Secondary School, and a few more minutes in the other direction will lead you to Lockerbie, which are the main high schools in the South End, along with St. Ben's. And for elementary schools, there's Algonquin Road and R.L. Beatty. But by now you're probably wondering, what's the average sale price for homes in the South End? Here is the average sale price for South End homes through 2021. And the last neighborhood I'll be talking about is the one that everyone's trying to get into, and that is New Sudbury. If you're entering Sudbury from the east or coming from North Bay, New Sudbury is the first area you enter when driving through the city. New Sudbury has some major amenities like Costco, which is always packed and currently installing a gas station. There's also the New Sudbury Shopping Centre, which is the largest mall in Northern Ontario, and a 5-minute walk from that is Cambrian College, which is bringing in students from all over the world. Walkability is one of the many reasons why there's so many buyers looking at New Sudbury specifically. If you're an investor, you know that walkability is important for most tenants. If you're a first-time buyer, the proximity to schools, trails, shopping centers, and parks is probably interesting to you or your growing family. Some of the schools that make up New Sudbury include St. Charles, Holy Trinity, LaSalle Secondary, and Cambrian College, which I mentioned before. As a whole, New Sudbury doesn't change too much street to street, but it's still important to use a local realtor when shopping in any neighborhood. And just to give you an idea of how spread out Sudbury really is, New Sudbury and the South End are opposite ends of town, and it's about a 20-minute drive between them thanks to all the rock and lakes that we have to drive around. If you're looking to buy a home in New Sudbury, these are the prices that you should expect to pay. Out of all the average sale prices I've shown so far, take this one with a grain of salt because personally, I feel like the average sale price in New Sudbury is a lot closer to $450,000. By now, hopefully you have a better understanding of Sudbury's neighborhoods and how they're laid out. But if you have any questions, leave a comment below or reach out to me on Instagram at realestate.mason. And subscribe so you don't miss my next video talking about the outskirts and places like Lively, Chelmsford, and the Valley. If you live in Sudbury and you feel like I missed something, leave a comment below. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.